message today that is simply entitled Fueled by Faith. And this is off the back of what Pastor James brought last week. So we had our Vision Sunday, and we talked about all the things that are happening with the building, and we had our announcement that as of January 2026 we're going to be going to all morning services, which is really, really exciting. And I want to just bring us a message off the back of that. And I don't know about you, but sometimes when I watch TV or I watch a film, there's often a line or an idea that sticks with me. Anybody else feel that? Like you think, wow, that's a really good line, I'm going to use that. And one line that has stuck with me since I was about 10 years old is from a film that I watched a lot, and it was the film Matilda, you know, with Danny DeVito as Pam Ferris, and she's got the big bun on her head and she looks really, really scary. But when you watch that film, there's one of the lines that the Trunchbull says, so that's the scary head teacher, and she talks about one of the sports that she plays, and that's the shot put. And she simply says these words: the distance the shot put goes depends upon the effort you put into it. She gets really into that. The distance the shot put goes depends on the effort you put into it. Thanks, Danny. And you've obviously seen the film. But it's very scary, and that line has stuck with me. So like when I'm doing my exercises, well, the distance this exercise is going to go is going to be dependent on the effort that I put into it. You know, I was feel really challenged by that line. And, you know, last week we had the vision weekend, and the vision that we have as campus pastors for this campus over the sort of the next year to 5 years. And I want to say to us that if all we have is excitement for that vision for the coming year, then it's not going to last. It's not going to get us very far, because excitement eventually dies down. Excitement for something can fluctuate on the day to day. And I want to put it to us today that as we begin sort of closing off this year and looking ahead to 2026, we need to be fueled by faith, not just excitement. And I read this quote by a German pastor, a very old guy, who's a theologian as well, by Dietrich Bonhoeffer. And he said these words to a couple on their wedding day. He says, "Today, you are young and very much in love, and you think that your love will sustain your marriage. It can't. Let your marriage sustain your love." And I think the principle of these words can be applied to the vision and the plan that we have ahead of us. We think maybe the excitement for the plan, you just think, I'm just excited for the plan. You think if I just maintain that excitement, that it's going to see us through and help us get to where we're going as Generations Church. But the truth is that we need the plan and the vision to sustain our excitement for what God is doing. You know, we need the marriage to sustain the love. We need the plan and the vision to sustain the excitement for what God is doing in this house. And we need to be fueled by faith to keep going so that we see the good things that God has in store for this church. Because the reality is our excitement for it might die down. One day we might be excited. The next day we might be thinking, why the heck am I doing this? The next day we might be completely exhausted. That's the truth, isn't it? But actually, if we are fueled by faith, if we have that mindset for what we're doing, then we will see God at work. And you know, going back to that quote from Matilda, we could say that the distance this vision will go, the vision we were given last week, will depend upon the effort that we put into it. But the twist I want to put on those words is that by effort, I mean faith. The distance that this vision will go, the distance that this campus will go, depends on the faith levels that we put into it. And you know, as disciples of Jesus, as part of the body of Christ, it's not just down to me and James to bring the faith. We all need to have that expectation. We all need to set ourselves up for this faith journey. And hopefully, as I speak over the next few minutes, you'll find yourself inspired, maybe challenged a little bit, but getting ready to maintain your faith for the journey that we are embarking on. Are we ready? Excellent. So, let's turn to a familiar story in the Bible about being fueled by faith. I think this one really, really helps us. And we're reading in Mark chapter 5, verses 21 to 43. And he says this: when Jesus went in the boat, went back to the other side of the lake, and a crowd followed A leader of the synagogue named Jairus came there, and he saw Jesus and he fell at his feet. He begged Jesus, saying again and again, "My daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so that she will be healed and will live." So Jesus went with him. A large crowd followed Jesus and pushed very close around him. Among them was a woman who'd been bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered very much from many doctors and had spent all the money that she had, but her symptoms were getting worse. When the woman heard about Jesus, she came up behind him in the crowd and touched his coat. She thought, "If I can just touch his clothes, I will be healed." Instantly, her bleeding stopped. She felt in her body that she was healed from her disease. And once Jesus felt power leave him, he turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" His followers said, "Look at how many people are pushing against you, and you asked, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus continued looking around to see who had touched him. The woman, knowing that she was healed, came and fell at Jesus' feet. Shaking with fear, she told him the whole truth. Jesus said, "Dear woman, you are made well because you have believed. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." Whilst Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the house of the synagogue leader. They said, "Your daughter has died. There's no need to bother the teacher anymore." But Jesus paid no attention to what they said. He told the synagogue leader, "Don't be afraid, just believe." Jesus let only Peter, James, and John, the brother of James, go with him. And they came to the house of the synagogue leader. Jesus found many people there making lots of noise and crying loudly. Jesus entered the house and said to them, "Why are you crying and making so much noise? The child is not dead, only asleep." But they laughed at him. So after throwing them out of the house, Jesus took the child's father and mother and his 3 followers into the room where the child was. Taking hold of the girl's hand, he said to her, "Talitha kum," which means, "Little girl, I tell you, get up." And once she stood up and began walking, everyone was completely amazed. What an incredible story. Well, can you imagine being one of those disciples that got invited? Can you imagine being one of the disciples that wasn't invited? Oh, I bet there's a preaching there somewhere. We're not going to say that today. So, first thing I want to say to us today about being fueled by faith. Number 1 is that we need to know our fuel source. Yeah. We need to know the source of fuel for our faith. We need to turn to Jesus in all things. At every point of this journey, we need to remember to turn to Jesus, who is the source of our faith. Hebrews 12:2 reminds us that Jesus is the author and the perfecter of our faith. In Jesus, our faith starts and our faith begins, and it goes on to grow and increase the more we experience of him, the more we have those moments with Jesus. We go on to live in the assurance that God is completing in us the good work that he started, not just personally, but corporately as well. You know, our faith levels as individuals, as a body of Christ on this journey, we need to see the vision come into life over the next few years, and that's going to depend on our relationship with Jesus. Yeah. And the question is how often do we turn to Jesus in our lives? You know, the lives we live, you know, in our families, our jobs, the church that we're in, the things that we've been entrusted with, as we take care of them, as we have ownership over them, you know, when we maybe notice some of those bits are getting a little bit unhealthy or aren't quite what they need or need to be, or maybe they need that extra little bit of care, who are we turning to? Do we recognise that maybe some bits need bringing back to life? And if this is the case, where do we turn? Do we turn to Google first? Do we turn to books? Do we turn to people? You know, those things are good because you know we've got them, we can use them, and we use them wisely. But if our faith is going to be fueled, ready for the vision that we are embarking on and this plan, we need to know that we have to turn to the one who can impart wisdom, knowledge, and help us to grow in our faith for what we have the responsibility of caring for. We need to turn to Jesus. The synagogue leader looked at his dying child. He looked at his child and he was responsible for this child. He looked after them, cared for them. And at that moment, when everything had gone wrong, he knew who to turn to. He knew that Jesus was the only one who could help. He put his faith in Jesus. He sought him out in the crowds, and he went on to allow Jesus to be the fuel source. As we go on this journey into 2026, Generations Church Grimsby, Is our faith wholly, solely, completely dependent on Jesus? 2 Corinthians 9:8 says to us, God is able to make every grace overflow to you, so that in every way, always having everything you need. You ever look at your life and think, I haven't got what I need? But here it says, so that in every way, having everything you need, you may excel in every good work. God has good plans for us. God has promises for us, and He promises a full supply of everything that we need so that we can do that good work. We can overflow in His grace, knowing that we have not just enough to get by, but enough to excel in the good works. The woman who was bleeding, who came across Jesus in that large crowd, she knew of this overflow that came from Jesus. She knew of the power that Jesus had. She said, if I can just touch His cloak, if I can just, you ever have one of those moments, if I could just, if only I had, if this wasn't a problem, if this wasn't happening in my life, if I just looked at it this way, or whatever it might be, if I could just, we all have those moments, don't we? If we could just turn to Jesus, the source of our faith, then we will see Him do amazing things. And today I want to invite you to check where your fuel source is coming from. Our faith needs to be fueled from the one who's overflowing, the one who's going to affect our ability to function in that overflow. The woman went on to function, and she went on to share the good news of Jesus and what He had done. She went on in peace, it tells us, and she believed because she lived in the overflow. And I'm guessing that she went on to excel in the good work of gospel sharing. Yes. You can't have something like that happen to you and not let the good news be spread. The synagogue leader turned to Jesus in his time of need. He knew that Jesus was the only one who could help. And for us today, we need to turn to the fuel source of our faith as we go on this journey. The second thing, when it comes to being fueled by faith, is that we need to check that we have the right fuel. So we're turning to Jesus, and sometimes we might use other bits to help fuel us, but is it the right kind of fuel? We need to maybe sometimes quiet the noise that's trying to come in on those things that really need to fuel us. We need to check that we're using the right source. Have anybody ever put the wrong fuel in a car? No one's going to admit to that, are they? I've never done it. I know people have, and I know it's cost them a lot of money. I've never done it. But things like, anybody ever been to the gym and done a workout and eaten the wrong kind of food before you've done that? I've done that. I've done that. I've eaten cake thinking, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to burn it off any second. No, it's not true. But you ever tried to get a fire going with the wrong materials? By that I mean just wavy bits of paper. Yeah? It doesn't help. The kind of fuel that you use for your car, for your body, for lighting a fire is important. The fuel you use for your faith is so important. What is fueling us as a church? As an individual, what is keeping your faith going? When Jesus arrives at the house, this is one of my absolute favourite bits. I identify with Jesus greatly here. He says he arrives at the house. There are wailers, moaners, and criers. Do you know what? Go away and read the different translations of the Bible at this point, because they use some great words. There's people in the room who are doing nothing but creating a scene. They were the wrong kind of fuel that Jesus needed in that environment. What He needed was an environment of faith. He needed people who were going to be filled with faith so that the miracle could happen. And what did it say He does with the wailers and moaners? He threw them out. So what I'm not saying here, please hear my heart. We are not saying that we throw people out of church at all. But there was noise that was dampening the faith of the synagogue leader, dampening the faith of the monk, possibly dampening the faith of the disciples, as well as they're all going, oh man, how are we going to deal with this? We need to make sure that the fuel source is right. We need to make sure that as we go on the journey, we're thinking, who and what am I listening to?
Yeah, that's good.
Corporately, are we listening to united voices and hearts of faith? That psalm I read earlier talked about having solidarity and unity. Are we listening to voices and hearts of faith or voices of fear and problems? In our lives, are we listening to faithless noise or the voice of the faith-filled one?
That's good. Yeah.
If he's our source of faith, he's going to be the one who fuels our faith, and we need to listen only to him and find those people. And let's be a church who are listening for the same thing. In the same set of events, we read that Jesus took with him those who had faith, the mum, the dad, the disciples. He removed those who caused a bit of a scene and dampened that atmosphere of faith. So who and what are you listening to today? As we head into 2026, is there some noise that we need to maybe quiet? Is our faith drawing on and using the right fuel? Ask God. He'll soon show you. He'll show you where to act, where to move, what to do, what you're listening to that's wrong. Let's be fueled by faith. And lastly, as we move forward with the charge that we have and the vision that we've been given, we need to keep a track. We need to keep a check on our fuel supply for our faith. To be fueled by faith, we need to make sure that we've got a good supply. I think this brings the first 2 points together nicely, because knowing the source and checking that you have the right fuel is important, but we also need to maintain that fuel supply. It's a little bit like if you drive a car. There are some people who drive on fumes, so they let the petrol gauge get all the way. Any fume drivers in the house? Very honest of you, I admire that. Then there's those on the other side who don't let the fuel tank go below a certain level. Who's that? And I'm one of them. I was driving around Louth the other day, and I was watching 10 miles left. I'm like, oh, and then it got to 8 miles left. Oh, and then I drove to I got in my car to do the school run. It said 0 miles. And I went, oh, Lord, please just help me get to the school run. Then I got to the school run, got in my car, and it still said 0 miles. I was like, Lord, please help me get back from the school run. Because guess what? School run, it was raining. So I was like, Lord, I just need to get home. But there's different levels of how we watch. You know, I'm a fuel watcher. I check the gauge regularly, and it's important that we find a balance when we're checking our fuel supply. We need to maintain it. We need to make sure that it's not going below a certain level. Anybody like a fire pit or a chimney? Like you, I absolutely love those sorts of things. I love being sat around a fire pit in the evening, toasting my marshmallows. Me and Abby, we're marshmallow tasters, and we love doing that. But to get a good fire going, you need a good base fuel. You need coal. It's a good base burner for the fire. And, things that burn up quickly, those wrong sources of fuel, are not going to help keep the fire going. They might burn for a short time, but eventually the fire won't last. It will die down. You need a slow burning fuel. So that if the fire then does start to die down, there's something that's going to help something else to catch the light. And it's the same with our faith levels. We need to diligently check how our faith is doing, so that we know, are we being fueled by faith, or are we being fueled by excitement? Our faith should be a long, slow burner. Excitement may fuel our faith for a short amount of time, but it's developing our faith, adding to it, growing it, stretching it, having those moments with Jesus that's going to keep us going on the vision. If you take the fuel in the car example, we need to make sure that we're not at risk of driving around on a depleted supply. We need to keep it at a healthy level, so that on the tough days, because there will be tough days, there will be hard days. Today, when all the PA stops working, when there's all the dust in the hall, when the toilet breaks, it's great, because you've got the faith to say, do you know what? It's only in this season. If we keep a healthy level, we will see through the tough days, and we'll be able to draw on our faith source. How do we do this? How do we get to that place where we are fueled by faith? I think the answer is found in the words of Jesus himself, where he simply says to the Father, but they turn up and they say, don't bother him anymore, your daughter's died. There's no point. Faithless noise. Jesus says, don't be afraid, just believe. And this is a phrase that Jesus uses twice in the Bible. And I don't think it's any coincidence that he uses this phrase at 2 resurrection miracles. There's Jairus' daughter where he says this phrase, and he also says it at the resurrection of Lazarus. Jesus tells Martha, "Did I not tell you that if you believe," that word believe is so key here, "you will see the glory of God." In Mark 5:36, don't be afraid, just believe. And as we go into 2026 with this vision in mind, I want to encourage you to take some time to sit with God and do maybe a little check on your faith levels. Allow him to speak into you and build your expectation. Because you know what? We can turn up to God with expectation. God is a God of promises. And what he says is that as I will do this, I will be, I am. And when we turn up to God, we say, God, what can we expect of you? And as we sit and take time with him and give room for Holy Spirit, he comes and inspires our faith. We have an opportunity to raise our faith levels and increase our expectation of what we believe God is going to do in us and through us in this next season. You know, we can expect the miraculous. We can expect growth. We can expect salvation in this house. Jairus expected a miracle from Jesus, and we can do the same. Jesus encouraged Jairus when he sought him out, and then he hears the news of his death. Jesus says, don't be afraid, just believe. And the more we believe for, the more God responds. He responds to our faith. Don't let the noise and the faithless noise shut down your vision. Just believe. And I wonder if I could just invite the band to play Make Room, just whilst we bring our message to a close today. I just want to ask you, how are your faith levels doing? How are your faith levels? Just as we have a few minutes left today, what is fueling your faith? Do you need to revisit the source of your faith? Do you need to remember to turn to Jesus? Do you need to check that you've got the right fuel? Is there some noise that needs silencing? Is there something that's dampening your faith? Are you maintaining a good fuel supply? Do you need to believe again? Is the distance that this vision, the belief for growth, the belief that we have of what this church is called for, the distance that vision will go will depend on the faith levels that we put into it. We need to be excited about the vision. But as we move forward, excitement isn't going to sustain us. Excitement won't see us through on the hard days, but faith and trust in God's plan and in his vision will. Let's choose to be people who grow and build